Hello, everybody. I'm CJ Miller. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. That's across the Red River from beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. Do come check us out on your travels. Um, I really uh, love my town, love my area, love to think about sharing all that it has to offer with other people. And I want to hear about your towns too, where places where I might visit. This is a cool video for me. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start collaborating uh, some of my work, and I don't really. I guess maybe I do talk about this a lot more uh, than uh, than I think. I was like, I don't talk about it that much, but it really used to be all that I talk about. But uh, since I was elementary school, uh, that since I've learned to read. I've always been really into writing. I didn't have the words for it at the time, but creative writing, always making up little stories and things like that. So this is a bag. It's a pillowcase, really, but a bag in which I have kept just about every cell phone that I've ever had that has had like an inner storage capacity that's, you know, not the early 2G and 3G phones that really didn't have like a large memory capacity, but uh, some of these I don't even think that they make chargers for anymore, and I wish that I would have kept the chargers, but probably can find them. But these are like, do you know, like oh wait, maybe some of them are broken, you know, but perhaps I can replace. What is this? Huh. Look how far back my cell phone. This is like, uh, ah, my God, useless. Um, but I saved all these so that when I got ready to work on my writing seriously, that I would have like just pretty much everything that I've written, so that I can incorporate that. Some of the writing is going to be, it doesn't. It's not going to fit with this, and it's going to be uh, basically just useless random thoughts or whatever. Uh, but journals and things that I kept, and I keep a lot of handwritten journals too. But uh, mostly, uh, mostly since I started doing the YouTube uh, channel here. It's my thoughts have gone into these videos, and so I've written a lot less. But it was always my intention that when I got to be around the age that I am now, because I didn't want to, you know, I'm doing it again, right? I'm speaking in pieces and phrases. Okay, long story short, I've been a writer since I was like a little boy, but and middle school, I used to write stories and I'd pass them around the middle school, like it was, and I got teased and bullied, like goofy kids, but I also had people that would like read the work that I read. And it was mostly like, science fiction, short story kind of stuff, anything that I could write on paper and then steal the paper, the staplers from our school. Like I'd get my test back, the ones that I really didn't care about, where they were stapled together, and I would take all those staplers, and I would like manually unfold them, put them in because I didn't have a stapler. I was like, we were poor, So, and I would put them in the center of pages, and I would fold them up, and I would create basically my own pulp books with just whatever kind of paper I could get from around the school, whatever I could salvage, and I would write the stories and I'd put it on that, and And then when I got a little older, my dad noticed my love of writing, and he bought me an electric typewriter, just a secondhand electric typewriter, and I took it in my bedroom and set up a card table, and I spent a lot of my time writing. Uh, I was working on a. Oh my God! I tell you, this was so horrible. It's something that's never really going to get written. Not as the way that I was writing when I was a little kid, but it was basically uh, a soap opera uh, called. Uh, what did I call it? I think I called it Motherly Love. This was so bad. This is. Let me tell you. When we were little, probably 12, 13 years old or something, my mother, now she screened the books first and she thought it was okay. So she let us read the Flowers in the Attic book series. And that's the one where, like, um, the father dies, and so the mother goes home to her rich family, and then they find out that her husband was her uh, half uncle or something like that. Not like anything super scandalous or anything like that. It really wasn't, but it kind of was for the time. It's and then the kids got locked in the attic and everything like that. And then it was all sort of like, it's yeah. So I was trying to like recreate that vibe, and so this was just like the upper class, upper middle class kind of family, maybe kind of working on being, in my mind, business people and homeowners and all that kind of stuff, because we were renters, and so that was my idea, the filthy rich, but anyway, they were, yeah, I was uh, the matriarch. She was having an extramarital affair with a younger man. Ooh, scandalous. And then the younger man uh, meets the woman's daughter, and and doesn't know that they're like related or anything like that. But he kind of begins kind of relationship with that. That's kind of like the Graduate kind of thing, right? That setup. Except it becomes known as the story that I'm writing, that the son is the adopted son uh, that the woman had and gave away before she found this life, because she's from a kind of a that was it would have in that time it would have been women didn't they gave the babies away and everything like that. It would have been uh, so it was all that kind of setup. So, and it was like, oh my God, like accidental incest stuff or whatever. So it's like, 13-year-old little mind, and it's like, oh my God, and I didn't write anything. It wasn't like graphic. I didn't write like graphic, uh, porn or anything like that, but it was just the soap opera of it. It was everything that soap operas wanted to do at the time, but they weren't doing. And still don't, but Flowers in the Attic. But that's not something that I would write now. But that's what I was working on as I was in my little uh, room. And then I was also working on, because I was like, I don't know. I read a lot, and so what I read a lot of Stephen King. I read a lot of anything that I could get a hold of, bestseller, pulp, paperback, you know, uh, anything. And there was one, and I can't remember the woman who wrote it, but it was great. It really made an impact on me. It was such a simple story. The story is called "Out Are the Lights," and you can find it. And this was in the '80s when I read it, and it may have been written earlier before, but it was on the bestseller list. And so the heroine of this story, um, she's deaf, but she's also she's trained. She goes to all these classes on self defense, and she's a woman that, if she's going to be a woman alone, she's going to take care of herself, kind of thing. And she stumbles upon, she goes to a movie theater, and it kind of follows her, and then it kind of follows the producers of these movies. And I guess what they're doing is like snuff films or whatever, but not like sexual snuff films. They're just doing like horror films, but they're realistic horror films or whatever. And it's like but then they're also playing in small circuits uh, as lead in to bigger movies. And they're dubbed, and people don't really pay attention to what's going on because it's being dubbed, so they think that it's they don't know that they're actually watching people being killed. But this woman who is deaf uh, is a lip reader, and so she reads the lips of the actors, and it's like, oh my god, this is real. And so she uh, tries to report it to you know the theater and to the police and everything like that or whatever, and they're like, hey, we're gonna would get the police here and everything like that, you know. But anyway, she ends up getting kidnapped, and she's going to be the next victim. And then remember, she's an ass kicker. And that is what she does. She commences to kick ass. And I always thought that it's not timely now. It's um, because there aren't really any. I guess you could do. There are like small film festivals and things like that. You could take this story and you can set it to that backdrop. Uh, art film in making the circuit and stuff like that. But you really couldn't do it in uh, the context of this was drive-in and matinee theater culture, where you would go in and you'd see a movie and you could watch the movie, then you'd see like smaller shows, so I mean it's um, yeah. um, I don't even, like I said, some of these I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to find um, older plugs and stuff. Okay, so but I read all these stories, and so I was writing this one story. I couldn't do it now. And I'd have to really really change it up. Plus, you're writing as like a teenager, 12, 13 years old. It's like you have a different, like I do. I have a different mindset as someone in my early 50s, certainly than I did when I was 13. Uh, the work was more mature than I was. I didn't have the skills and I didn't have the writing set to uh, take these stories and craft them in the style in which they needed to be told. I have the stories, uh, very you know adult type situations, and I'm trying to write this and submit it to people around my school, my writing clubs and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, no, this is not. This material is too heavy for us. It's, you know what I mean, like in your school publications and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's too, and so that kind of like bummed my spirit out for a while. But at the same time, uh, I started getting involved with martial arts, primarily South Korean Taekwondo. And I'm sitting here like, can I turn these on? I really can't. I'm just pulling these out to look at them. Some of the screens are going to be like fractured, and I'm not going to be able to make work of them anyway. So if I remember any of these, really, I just like just any. I keep them. This is, what is this? One of the earlier Q-Link phones when they first started doing the. That's not going to be a very useful thing. Um, I was when I was poor and I had to rely on. I mean, I'm still poor, but what is this one? ZTE. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the inner screen on this one is warped or broken or something. But I'm hoping that if nothing else, maybe I could find some of the cards if I swap out. If there's any kind of storage uh, on the cards that I can, salvage some of that. But then some of these, the storage is actually in the phone. Boy, this is an old one. This is a Samsung. Look how old this Samsung is. This thing is tiny. Um, my God, what's on there? Okay, but I'm excited about that. I recently acquired another laptop, and I started collating the work for my first writing project that's going to go, I would say, my first larger uh, that I'm going to release to the open market via self publishing uh, online, and that is going to be a collection of poetry accompanied by some of my paintings that I've done. So mostly it's work that people would have already seen in piecemeal, when I've shared my poetry online back when I used to do Facebook or whatever. But I don't do that. I don't have the Facebook account anymore. So, but basically, I'm just going to like upgrade and then format and work on sequencing and put them into a format that I can live with and I can be happy with. I know this one's useless. It's an earlier LG. It's getting dusty. There's more. Wait, there's more. Actually, I think this is it. Motorola. No, yeah, it's an early Cricket phone, but it may be yeah. So there's some stuff on here. So what I have to do is I have to find, but I don't think it was like, some of these will use a C charger. Most of them will use like earlier chargers when they were, what uh, what preceded a Type C charger. But yeah. Okay, so that's fun. I'm gonna have so much fun going back over because this is kind of like my history. The last how long have we had 4G phones? That's when this started. When I it's got, I know these for, I guess, for the last 10 years plus is where some of this stuff is going to go. Is where some of this stuff going to come from. But even then, some of that work was work that I've had with me inside of me since I was elementary school. Uh, because one of the things that I loved was I loved reading, the short stories in the collections that Stephen King would write, and he would make reference to great writers like H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, who is basically the father of the modern short story, and so I went back and I read those, and I was like, wow, this is great, and then I went back and really read the classics like Bram Stoker, the Dracula books, Dracula being the first one, but it was basically that was fluff. They didn't consider that it was good at the time that it was published. I mean, it was whatever. I mean, it wasn't the greats. It wasn't War and Peace. It wasn't Shakespeare. It wasn't even Dante's Inferno. But what it was a story of controlling relationship. That's the subtext. Not so much even the subtext of it, because when I'm reading the Dracula, and I'm in the part where the three brides are gonna like maybe ascend upon Jonathan Harker when he's in the castle, and Dracula, you know, backs him off and tells him to go to bed, and he tells the brides, "You say I do not love you, that I cannot love, but I do." He does that whole like manipulation thing of his brides. Like he's he got three brides, and they're okay with, what I mean. That's you know how can you say I cannot love? Whatever, I can't do it. But so but Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, I read that. Um, and I got tricked into reading that because that is a style that I thought would be too. I love the story, but it's a classic and gothic, and even as a person in late elementary school, I think I had this mentality that it would have been too sophisticated or too complicated of a writing for me to comprehend. So I had not that I was scared of the subject matter, but the style of writing. I thought maybe I'd have trouble understanding it, but no, it was there was a volume of it that was in our library, and it was it was almost it was the cover of it looked, it was illustrated on the cover, and it had like a couple of illustrations inside of it, but it was the novel of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I thought maybe it was written in some sort of sophisticated. Uh, no, it was as written. There were occasional footnotes that would help with the reference and everything like that. But it was like, oh my God, I'm reading like, you know, what I considered, classic literature and comprehending it. And whoa. And by the way, being interested in it, you know. Uh, I read the novel Jaws, in fourth or fifth grade or something like that. So I was a bit peculiar because it was overnight. It was like, okay, so here I am reading, and I love these, Mother Goose, the fairy tales, that I read or either had read to me as a little boy, uh, mostly by my sister, and then so I was just trying to like memorize all these because these stories were great. The Grimm fairy tales, this is this horrible horror stories. Fucking giants chasing little boys and trying to grind them up and eat them like a giant cannibal or something. These were horror stories. They really were. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So that. Ooh, that was a horror story. That's it reads like a fairy tale, but it's horror. And there have been horror versions of these things, so I get it. But I saw that as I was like, oh my god, this is some, oh my god, this is basically in my cause like blood and guts, because remember this is the age of the early 1980s, and anything there was worth viewing at the movie theater. Uh, for a kid my age, it really really serious um, works which were probably too sophisticated for me at the time. Uh, the French Lieutenant's Woman, the Meryl Streep stuff, the Deer Hunter, that kind of stuff, way too sophisticated uh, for me, and I would have thought of it as at the time, at that little kid age, I would have thought of it as boring, you know. But today I love, you know, uh, the great acting that's in those films. Uh, Terms of Endearment, it comes to mind as being something that was out around these times, and they'd come out of the theater, and then they'd work their way to pick up. But anything that, and it was either that or it was a slasher horror film that would make its way to cable TV, that sometimes we could get to a theater to see if we could coax our parents to take us. They didn't like to take us. So mostly we would see them when they came on TV. Now, my love of slasher horror is not, I don't just, ooh, look at that. I'm not like a sicko in the head or anything like that. It's just that I have an older brother. He's no longer with us. He's passed on, but he's a stepbrother, and I wasn't raised with him. And one of the few memories that I have was being like a little boy, and then the whole group of us, we went to this drive-in theater, and there really wasn't that much to do in Eastlake or whatever, like in Louisiana, where he was living, where we were visiting. But yeah, we went to see the theater. To the drive-in when they still had a drive-in movie, and we saw Friday the 13th, the double feature, part one and part two. And so uh, when I, and then of course my sister also, yeah, we watched, a lot of little horror movies, and the kids at school, they would tell, they'd see their horror movies and they'd come back and they'd tell us what happened and stuff like that. And so it was kind of like that was the culture. And it was like, and these were not like, some of the images were grotesque, but usually it wasn't so horrific. It wasn't worse than what you would see, like, going through a haunted house or something like that, a carnival or fun house or whatever. It wasn't anything worse. It wasn't anything worse than what we'd been reading as kids, with the Red Queen off with her head, Alice in Wonderland kind of stuff. Uh, yeah, so, um, which was all about life and death, and the hardship and overcoming hardship, finding hope within hopeless situations for the heroes. But for the side characters, not always so much. So, these are the things that were going on inside of me as a little bitty kid. Now, you should have seen some of this stuff. I remember I was in art class, and we were told to draw like a picture, like a storyboard or something like that. And uh, basically this storyboard, and I used the characters from the Pac-Man video games and everything. So, because Pac-Man, I had Pac-Man fever, right? And the Saturday morning cartoon was Pac-Man and everything like that. So it was Pac-Man and his wife Pepper, and baby Pac-Man, Pac-Man Jr. or something like that. Then you had like the four ghosts, and then the four ghosts had like a overlord that would send them out or something. I forget his name, but I did this whole like, Pac-Man as a secret agent going to infiltrate and basically save the Pac world. He was literally on a mission. You know, it wasn't just like Pac-Man going about town and there's the ghosts that are going to chomp him. No, this was, uh, I made it about espionage. And what was going on? I must have, and I don't think I was a 007 fan of James Bond, that I would just sit and watch James Bond and know what's going on in James Bond movies or anything like that. But I must have been exposed enough to them enough that that this kind of story was somehow, by just by sidelong exposure in my head. But that was cool. It was like a huge big poster board, and I did the panels, and it was like, hey, it was a full on plot, and then Pac-Man had to like sneak into the lair of the ghost monsters, and get in there and get the item, and then they had to escape. And uh, there was a point, I think, where they had him captured or cornered or something like that. It was very, but it was Pac-Man, because that's a little boy mind that I had. you know uh, maybe maybe one of the first things I did in fourth grade. I don't know. So as far as like creative kind of stuff, uh, so weird. But all these different types of stories, they're still inside of me, and so now it's time that I get to start working on putting them together, and all the talking that I've been doing all these years. Well, my skill level, even as much as I read and everything, I was never really happy with how I was. I don't know. It was, but now I'm at a place where I've got all these bits and pieces and outlines and everything, and I have kind of you know a purpose. I have sort of an idea of what I want to say to people. That's something else too. I didn't really feel like doing a lot of writing and just pushing it out, because I didn't know. I had a voice, but I didn't know how to use the voice in the things that I want to say to the world. Because if you are anyone who's into some sort of creative writing, uh, personal journaling is different than creative writing, because creative writing is an outlet also, but it's something that you might share with other people, whereas your personal journals, you really don't, you know. So yeah, it's like what how much uh, of what I had to say do I want to share with the world in written format and everything. So uh, I think honestly the painting has helped that, because I started painting several years ago, and every once in a while I'll paint something that I, not most of the time I'll keep it, but sometimes I'll paint something and it's like, okay, gee, uh, feel like maybe I can offer this one to sell, or something like that. I just recently I completed some, and I was gonna, or I don't know if they're completed, but they're close enough to completion that I feel like I know one's completed, maybe one's I'm still gonna tinker with. But it was like, you know what? I think I'm actually glad that I didn't get around to selling them, because I think uh, because I've used them. I've used one of them as the cover to the book that I'm formatting, and then a couple of them are going to be in. Uh, there's even a couple of bits that I've worked on in here, and they're going to be you know the occasional illustration uh, into the book of poetry that basically is unconnected works for the most part. Some of them may call back to each other, because poetry is like that. You'll write something and then you'll self-refer. Like a couple of years later, you're writing something else, and it's like, okay, this particular uh, block of phrasing works for the original poem that you wrote it for, but it also works over here. So there's some of that, but mostly it's unconnected and it's original, and most of it's already been read. Most of it's available on the poetry repository site that I use, and I just kind of put it there because once someone told me about it and I discovered it, then I figured it was a safe place that I could. And I so it was like years of poetry, and some of this poetry goes all the way back to my boyhood. You know, uh, in in portion. In portion, if not all of it. So. Um, I'm excited. Most of it got formulated when I was doing theater when I was in my late 20s, and it was a very creative time for me. But I didn't have an outlet except for our theater had a newsletter that we would put out that would uh, kind of announce what play we were talking about and individual philosophies. But the the chairman of our group was also the editor, and so after I did 3 or 4 articles and a couple of creative pieces, uh, I really got tired of being editorialized. It's like, no, 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 dude, I wrote this way for a specific reason, because it is from the voice that is inside of my head, through which does the writing, which it's me, but I mean, it's the way that I think inside of my head. It's from that perspective that I'm creating a writing. So I don't need to be editorialized by someone you know, whose writing format is playwriting. It's a different format than some of the poetry that I'm writing, and it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. Emotions don't come in a form of perfect syntax. So yeah, like quit editing my stuff. So eventually I just kind of quit submitting stuff, and that was sort of at the end of my tenure with this group, this theater group uh, that I'd been with for a couple of years by that point. So it was cool, but I did have like, oh my god, like a binder, uh, like a one of those 5-star binders, those big with all the different little pockets, and they're all neat and everything like that. And the inside of it, like just stacks of like loose leaf paper, and we flipped through it, and it was like just random bits of poetry. Sometimes just automatically writing, and it would just be like, some of it made sense, some of it did not, and it would just be, uh, you know, page upon page of just verse, and that's the kind of style that I would say very abstract, and that I don't mind that, because I could put that out, someone can look at it and they can get their own interpretation, and I love that. Like I love that I've done some of that and I've shown some of that to people, and then it's like they will come across with the meaning that has nothing to do with how I was feeling or what I was thinking, the way that I was writing it. And I think that's perfectly okay. I love that, because that's like creating a painting that is abstract. And as you look at it, you could appreciate the form and content. But if it touches someone emotionally, it's going to be in different places, and it's going to be through different interpretation. And also, in something like that, where it is displayed, uh, gives it a context that it may not have. If you take like an abstract painting and it's alone on a wall, then it's there. But if it's part of a collection, then it takes on a different meaning in the context of that collection. And that is why I'm spending so much time on the sequencing of these poems, and where I'm placing the illustration, uh, where I want there to be kind of like a flow, even though they're not connected. But I want there to be a flow, but I want there to be kind of an emotional. I want it to be almost like an emotional massage. You know what I mean? Where it comes across kind of easy into it, and then the different parts or the different poems, the different things that will come in, and it'll be kind of a hopefully reaching people in ways that express uh, various scenarios and moods, and as it changes tense, because that's something that poetry can do. It's like it's wonderful. You change uh, perspective, and you change tense, and so one poem is like written from the perspective of a teenage boy, and the other perspective is written from someone who's uh, had a longer life and has had the benefit of making some mistakes, and can look back and be like, it's kind of like, what would you go back and tell yourself if you could, that kind of stuff. So, but through all that, through all that experience, there's more experience with emotion and how to interpret emotion and communicate it through poem, be it an anecdote out of my personal life, or in most of the cases, being written from the perspective of created characters that have nothing to do with anybody in real life, outside of conveying emotions that I would have thought, felt, or imagined. So sometimes it's like, okay, well, I wonder what it would be like to be a family man and raise a family and have that kind of experience, because that's not my life. But there's some things that I've written from that perspective. Like, I wonder what. There's a poem I've written from the perspective of a um, from an early immigrant from a long time ago, that basically almost a mail order bride. Was she's probably too young to know better, and barely spoke English outside of her native tongue. And so I wrote a brief poem from that perspective, and how it's like, hey, you're not I don't want you speaking that language. I want you speaking English. You're in America now. You're gonna be, you know what I mean? And just like, you know, being told to change and made to change and to assimilate into America. You know, so I wrote from that. What would that have been like? You know, um, um, I wrote. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it all, but I've written character pieces, um, kind of assuming the roles of what it must be like for these characters to be in these particular situations that I'm never going to be in, because as much as I want to communicate the thoughts that I have inside of my heart and my head, I want to hear and dialogue and try to understand what other people uh, have to bring to the table, what other people have to say to the world. So that's what my poetry is about. It's about talking about my perspective and trying to understand the perspective that I'm hearing from other people from other walks of life. So, and that's going to be. I've already started formulating that. Once I get it ordered the way I want, then I will probably self-publish on Amazon. Because I don't think we don't have any local publishers, and I'm not someone that can just run around and take a manuscript and pester the hell out of people and publishers and stuff like that. And why would you when it's not really about the money? It's just about um, I don't know, completion of a work. It's time to complete this uh, work of poetry. And I'm telling you, there's hundreds of them that I've collected. That's just the poetry. Then all this, all these phones and things like that. That's where the short stories and novellas are going to come from. That I also want to start working on. So I don't know. Wish me luck. You know how it is to get fired up, and you're just like you get into it, and that's cool while it's hot. You're working while it's hot, and then sometimes your passion project kind of cools, and maybe you got to like set it aside for a little while or whatever. I'm kind of like that with my writing. You know what I mean? Uh, so I mean, I don't throw anything away that I really plan on doing something with, but it's not like urgent. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Mostly because I was doing a lot of Facebook stuff because I had Facebook from the very first time I think it was like from the earliest moments in which Facebook had an app on the phone. There was like that Facebook on a computer, but the moment it became an app on a phone, and it was my niece. She told me about it. She was like, "Oh, you could do Facebook on a phone and just reach out on people." And it was like, that's. And so I had one Facebook account that I kept that whole time. So it was one of the earliest, uh, and I don't know. It's like at some point, it's like at this point, what I'm doing is I'm doing more visual artwork versus I'm not just like and it went from I don't know. There's a lot of it. It became like too. It was a very political world. People just kind of like you know bickering back and forth about sex, politics, religion, money, all this kind of stuff. That it's like that is the conversation that you have with your family and friends. You're sitting around the table, and you can, um, the people that you have those conversations with, and that way you care about hearing each other. Nobody, nobody at the time uh, that I'm talking about, we're talking like from 2000, whatever, whenever I did that, going all the way uh, into just a few years ago, uh, nobody was caring what anybody else had to say. The only thing people wanted to do on that Facebook, and this was right before it became Meta, or maybe it was becoming Meta, I don't know. But the only thing people wanted to do was they wanted to say what they had to say, and there was no room for conversation, adjustment to the course, anything. There was no collaboration. People just, oh, this is the way it is, and if you don't think this way, then you're stupid. And that really, I don't know if it's still like that or not because I don't do Facebook and I could care less uh, about that type of conversation. I think that it's great to be mindful of the world that we live in and to care about our policies. I don't think ever that it's important enough to hate on each other because we have differences in the methods and procedures by which we would run the world if we were the politicians, you know. And if we cared that much about it, anyone that passionate about it, get your ass out there and campaign and run and get elected. You know, who knows? Yeah. But anyway, yeah, maybe you can be one of our leaders of our government. I don't know. Uh, if you're good, I'll support you. But yeah, no, I just don't want to have those conversations. That's not what I wanted my life to be about. And so at that having that realization and then also at the same time realizing that a lot of what I was doing was more visual and I wanted uh, painting and arts and I wanted to have this kind of stuff with people, videos, whatever. Then and I really wanted a channel to get involved with my city, as far as like propping it up and just like letting people know, hey, I love it. I really did. Uh, like any hometown, there's a lot of people who trash it. It's like, oh my god, I just want to leave. I did leave, and I can tell you that everything that is that needs to be worked on here needs to be worked on everywhere. And yeah, and everywhere you go, it's like, oh my god, there's a I don't know, the same opportunity and the same lack of opportunity, depending upon the fields or whatever that we're expressing to go into or whatever. It's a much smaller world than it used to be, though. So you don't have to do like I did when I was young and feel like I have to like go away and live 4 or 5 states away. I don't necessarily. I don't think it's bad uh, to go out into the world and see what's out there and get some experiences. Uh, I certainly think it's expansive to one's personal experience, um, but it shouldn't be because you think the grass is greener, in another lot because it's really not. Uh, it's people are the same, different styles, different accents, different uh, cultures, but ultimately, we're social creatures, and people want to be included, and people want to feel safety, and they want to feel love, and they want to express love to other people. You know, and even all the evil that we do is collectively as a species is in it's in the desire for obtaining uh, love. You know, the most corrupt among us probably are doing what we think it is best to do. Sympathy for the devil, right? Okay. I'm not excusing the villains of history or anything. Um, all right. When I finish writing, uh, I'll let you know about it. Then please buy the book. Okay, I love you. Love and light. Peace. Good night.